Hello and welcome to Commodity Champions. I'm Manisha Gupta. India's gems and jewellery sector is seeking government's intervention as the United States readies to impose a 50% tariff from the 27th of August. The US accounts for nearly 30% or $10 billion of India's gem and jewellery exports, even as competition rises from Turkey, Thailand and Vietnam. Meanwhile, the industry is preparing for festival demand, with gold imports in 2025 expected at around 600 to 700 tons. The markets are looking at higher sales this time around, especially as the Diwali is earlier, and then it would be followed by the wedding season as well. To discuss all of these issues further, we are now joined by Ankur Daga. He's co-founder at Angara. Ankur, hi, thank you so much for joining in. First of all, India is a new market for you, and the festival season is just about begun, and the wedding season is going to follow soon through. How are you looking at the Indian numbers right now, especially given the fact that when you look at the last 1 month, the gold, silver, platinum, palladium, all of those prices actually have come off its recent highs. How are you looking at the current markets? What are the calculations that you have for the next 3 months in sense of Indian demand?
We're quite excited about the India market. So we launched in April. We're growing at 50% month on month, obviously off a pretty small base. But I think we'll be very pleasantly surprised by the market there. Also, next year, India will be the largest jewelry market in the world. So we're quite excited about the growth there as well as the size of the market overall.
50% of a growth on a month-on-month basis, Ankur, that's quite a number there. Are you looking at that sustaining? And when you say India is going to be the biggest market, you do seem, which category are you really looking at?
So in terms of the growth sustaining at these numbers, probably not. 50% month on month is pretty incredible. It's also a small base. I do see it as market will touch 1,000 crores in revenue by 2030. So that's kind of the target. And I think we'll be comfortably reaching that target. In terms of the market overall, the US and India are roughly 85 billion each in terms of market size, the two largest in the world. India is growing at 10 to 15% a year. The US is growing at roughly 4%. So by next year, we imagine it to be the largest market in the world and growing from there on out.
Ankur, when it comes to the Indian markets, of course, gold continues to be a very big chunk there, but your focus also is in diamonds and gemstones mostly. How are you looking at those categories doing for you?
They're relatively smaller categories. So just to give you an idea, 88% of what's sold in India is pure gold jewelry. Then you have 10% that's diamond jewelry and less than 2% that's color. That 10% and 2% are poised to grow very quickly in the future. And we're really focused around the gemstone area, which we think will have tremendous growth going forward. And very similar in trajectory to the US market roughly 2 decades ago.
Ankur, are you at all concerned or perturbed by the kind of tariff moves that we have seen globally, especially when it comes to Indian exports to US? I'm assuming that you're not into that category, but how are you looking at various countries dealing with US tariffs right now? You are in various countries as well. How are you working that around?
Yeah, so I think the latest round of tariffs, if it hits 50%, it will be a profound impact on the industry. So to give you an idea, 90+% of the world's diamonds that are cut and polished are polished out of India. 50% tariffs are just not feasible. It's an industry that really thrives on very high volume, very high inventory turns, but low margin. So a lot of that margin, a lot of that tariff will be absorbed by the US consumer, which will, I think, be challenging going forward, especially as we enter the peak season.
And that is something that will impact not just the Indian markets, but world markets across when it comes to diamonds. So when you look at that 50%, even 25% for that matter, because this is not a very big margin commodity to begin with, the diamonds itself, would you say not just India, but it's various manufacturers and jewelry makers around the world talking about that, discussing this?
Yeah, ironically, so the India right now has the highest tariffs in the world, or amongst the highest, and when it hits 50%, it will certainly be the highest. So to give you an idea, Thailand has a 19% tariff. The UAE has a 10% tariff. A lot of the European countries, including Italy, have a 15% tariff. So India is already now at a disadvantage. And, historically, loose diamonds, for example, have had a 0 tariff going into the US. So this is a pretty fundamental change. And also, I think from an Indian manufacturing standpoint, it largely becomes uncompetitive just because it ends up being more expensive because of the tariffs.
Oh, well, absolutely. How are you then looking at the international markets? Because the belief really is that much of the exports that had to happen for the Christmas or the holidays have happened in June and July, because most of the markets did feel, or manufacturers did see it coming in the month of August. Would you say this season is done with, or is this season is something that India perhaps is writing off?
So, for example, for us, we manufacture primarily out of Thailand for the US market, so we're not as affected by what's happening in India specifically. But I think for the industry overall, when the tariffs first kicked in April, there was a 5x increase in exports to the US to beat the tariffs. And even in July, we saw a surge of imports from India to beat the round of tariffs that was likely to come in August. I think the industry starts getting towards a standstill after August 27th, if it hits 50% tariffs. I think a lot of that demand for import goes to Italy and and other countries around the world at the expense of India's export sector.
Oh, well, absolutely. As you said, much of your manufacturing happens out of Thailand. Would you say that's one of the perhaps the better in sense of competition? UAE is lower, Italy much lower as well. And then, of course, you have Thailand, Indonesia doing some bit as well. Where do you see the most competitive of markets emerging right now?
Yeah, I think Thailand and the UAE will stand to gain from this. Ironically, even China is lower than India's 50% proposed tariff, so India will be the highest in the world there.
How are you looking at various categories when it comes to gold within Indian markets as well, since you are going to be playing this now? There is jewelry now being created from 24 carats to even 9 carats on the lower side.
We're quite excited about the move towards BIS certifying 9 carat as well. I think it opens up the aperture for a lot of consumption on the diamond and color side. With the gold prices doubling over the last couple of years, I think, the traditional 18 and 22 carat was becoming very unaffordable. And all of a sudden, with the opening up of 9 carat, we'll see a lot more gold jewelry consumed as a result, and also studded jewelry consumed as a result.
As you said, Ankur, when it comes to studded jewelry, that still is a smaller part. Pure gold jewelry, as you rightly said, is 88% perhaps. When you look at the other categories, whether it is studded, diamonds and gemstones, what is the kind of growth that you're anticipating for India within that?
I think certainly we'll see gemstones appreciate or consumption rise at double-digit growth. I think we will see that for diamonds as well. And incidentally, we'll see it for silver jewelry as well as gold becomes more and more expensive.
The silver jewelry exports from India for the month of July were not so great. But when you talk about the Indian markets per se, well, yes, the silver jewelry seems to be looking at a double-digit growth in the markets here as well. Are you looking at, this is not very traditionally done, but silver also being studded, silver also with diamonds and gemstones, etc. Do you see that kind of a fusion also coming in for the Indian market?
Oh, absolutely. And we're seeing it in the US already. We're even seeing
Okay.
mixed metals. So you have silver and gold together in one piece in the US to try to bring price points down. I think you'll see a variety of different approaches towards silver going forward.
Ankur, how have been the prices really when it comes to diamonds? Because there was some stability that we saw in the first half of this year. Are we looking at some gains after those 2 years where we saw demand decline and the prices being quite choppy as well?
So to give some context, diamond prices over the last 3 years are down anywhere from 25 to 40%, depending on the size and quality. I think that's largely stabilizing now as there's reduced supply coming into the market and demand is relatively stable now. So we're seeing a flattening of the curve on the pricing side for diamonds, certainly.
And the lab-grown story continues to go quite strong even now, because when you look at the exports, when you look at the kind of consumption and adoption that we see in the international markets, continues to be very, very strong. How are you looking at 2025 playing out for lab-growns?
I think lab grown is going through a massive shift right now. In the US, for example, it was only 2% of the engagement ring market in 2018. This last quarter was above 55%. So the majority of engagement rings sold in the US now are lab grown, and that's poised to continue, especially as we see more tariffs that will only accelerate the growth for lab, we believe.
But do you think it stopped disrupting the naturals right now? Because the last couple of years, the industry thought that was yet another reason, apart from slowdown and demand, that lab-grown was making a dent into the sales when it came to natural diamonds.
I think lab grown will certainly pick up share from natural, and that is likely to continue. I think what has caused the price to stop dropping is really reduced supply rather than increased demand for diamonds, and I think that will continue to be the case in the near term.
Ankur, also, how are you looking at gemstones when it comes to Indian markets? I mean, you've told us that double-digit growth is what you're anticipating here as well. But what geographies and what price tickets are you really looking at?
Our average ticket in India is roughly 65,000 rupees. In the US is $1,500 as a comparison. So it's a relatively high average ticket. And I think we're going to maintain somewhere in the 50 to 65,000 rupee range going forward for gemstone jewelry primarily.
When it comes to the Indian markets, I mean, you had, the last time I spoke to you as well, you said by 30,000 crores is what you're looking at in sense of revenues. Where do you see the maximum of that coming in from?
I think we'll see a lot of two types of goods. I think we'll see a lot of natural gemstones, and we will also see a lot of lab-grown diamonds. At least that's what we're seeing. We're seeing right now in terms of where the growth primarily is.
How are you categorizing then that? Where do you see a max profit or revenue coming from?
Lab-grown diamonds and colored gemstone jewelry, I think, are the two major push areas. That's where we're seeing the predominant growth.
India is a long season, really, Ankur. So it starts with the festival seasons, continues until Diwali like that, and then the wedding season picks up, and the festival season continues until the month of March and April, and slipping a bit into the month of May as well. So when you talk about the next 2 or 3 quarters in that sense, what is the kind of demand that you're anticipating? Because the first half of 2025 wasn't really great. In value-wise, kind of flat, volume absolutely a decline there. How are the next 3 months looking to you, or 3 quarters looking to you?
I think we're expected to see a lot of growth over the next quarter or so. I think what was surprising for us is even with the high gold prices, consumption was relatively strong. Assuming that prices don't appreciate further for gold tremendously, I think we'll see a very solid season going forward.
A final question, and a lot of people with the high gold prices seem to be going the investment way rather than the jewelry way. Do you see that in any case impacting the jewelry sales?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, jewelry is as an asset class is one of those rare unicorns where you get to you get to enjoy wearing it while it's appreciating. Gold, obviously, over the last 10 years in the US dollar terms, has gone up at 14% per annum, which has beat the Sensex and the S&P. And so that certainly is why people are migrating towards gold and away from other asset classes.
Clearly that. And we've seen not just the retail and the jewelry buyers, but central banks as well as institutions and high net worth individuals also go to gold in some sense as a portfolio diversification. But Ankur, as always, thank you so much for joining in and making sense of what the Indian markets could be looking at, the tariff impact, and of course, the international competition as well that India perhaps could be facing, not just in case of jewelry, but diamonds too. Well, on that note, it's time for a short break, but don't go anywhere. We shift our focus to edible oils with Adani Wilmar's Anshu Malik on the other side.